All right. Well, for latecomers, I'll allow them to join as we progress here. I don't want to keep anybody's day up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I hope everybody's safe and well. My name is Ryan. I'm the head of events here at PMI, Southwestern Ontario chapter. Thanks for joining us on this webinar on effective PM and BA role collaboration. Our title PMs are from Mars, BAs are from Venus. As I said before, we muted everybody's microphone for the presentation, but not to worry. We'll allow some time at the end for some Q&A at the end of the session, which is about 60 minutes. This presentation is being offered in partnership with Cheryl Lee of Knowledge Adapters. And with that introduction, I shall hand the microphone over to Cheryl.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Cheryl Lee. I'll start off with a quick introduction. So my name, again, Cheryl Lee. I am one of 4 global authors of the PMI Guide to Business Analysis. I am also co-author of Effective PM and BA Role Collaboration. So this topic here is near and dear to my heart. I had also started the first business analysis community within a PMI chapter at PMI Toronto. So I'm located in the Toronto area, and I had served as a director at IABA Toronto. What you probably noticed is that the title of this webinar, PMs are from Mars and BAs are from Venus, was adapted from the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And similar to the moral of that story, although it may sometimes feel like your cohort on a project is from a completely different planet, with communication and understanding, we can learn how to more collaboratively work together. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish here in the next hour or so. So more specifically, in terms of how we're going to do that, we're going to start by first defining what is business analysis. I think most of us are fairly well versed on what project management is, but there seems to be a lot more confusion on the business analysis front. Hence why we're going to focus on defining business analysis in the limited time that we have together. Part of the confusion, I think, on the business analysis side is because as a practice, project management is just much more mature than where we are right now with business analysis. But we're getting there. We're then going to look at the relationship between project management and business analysis and realize that there's a lot more in common than we probably initially thought. We're going to finish up this presentation by looking at this relationship between project management and business analysis on Agile Teams. So before we actually get started, I'm curious to know who we have in this session. So I'm going to ask Ryan if he can launch that poll, and I'm curious to know whether you're a project manager, a business analyst, a hybrid project manager, business analyst, or are you in that other category? All right, looks like most of us are PMs in here. Give it another few seconds. All right, so it looks like most of us are project managers. Let's share the results. Okay, everyone can see this now. So most of us in here are project managers, about 76% of us, and then we've got a few hybrids and someone in the other category. So no pure business analysts in here. All right, good to know. Just want to see what side of the fence you guys are on. Thanks so much, Ryan. Going to minimize that and continue through. So what does a business analyst actually do? So I'm going to start off by asking you, what do you think a business analyst does? So I know a few of you guys, we didn't have any peer BAs in here, but a few of you guys said that you were hybrid PM BAs, so the BA side of you. What do you tell your friends when they ask you to explain it? What do you do as a business analyst? And feel free to use the chat window. That's probably the easiest way since we're all muted. Are we being shy? Anyone able to talk about any characteristics of business analysts and some of the work that they do? Find the business value. Okay, awesome. For sure, yeah. So as BAs, we say that we do identify business needs, we maximize the profit, yeah. Financial reporting and scenario development, yeah, that's definitely part of our role as well. Usually to identify maybe what goes in reports, the purpose of the reports, the requirements of the reports, and scenario development to ensure that we're accounting for even error scenarios, not just the happy path. Defining requirements, the system, the process, good. Strategic alignment. Business, product, or opportunity feasibility studies. A bunch of headaches. Sometimes it does feel that way, huh, Jessica? Making sure all projects, programs, and efforts of business units meet strategic goals and benefit analysis. Awesome. So I think some of that you'll notice later on when we talk about the formalized definition of business analysis. A lot of these that you've mentioned here are part of that. So one last one, define what is required and what is currently happening. Perfect. Okay. Let me explain what I do as a business analyst. And I like to use an analogy. And the funny thing is, I actually came up with this analogy while on a road trip with my husband to Chicago years ago. So when we're crossing the border agent asked what we did for a living. And my husband is a teacher, so he said that. And I said, I'm a business analyst. The border agent asked, well, what is a business analyst? And my husband said, she analyzes the business. So that answer was good enough for the border agent. He allowed us to go through, but it wasn't good enough for me. So we spent the remainder of the road trip discussing what I did. And I tried the whole, translating business requirements to technical requirements. And they were like, he didn't understand that part because he was saying, well, what's a technical requirement? Like, doesn't everyone, why can't you just talk about it? Like, do they all not speak the same language? I'm like, no, that's not really the issue there. And it went far beyond just documenting requirements as well. So I'm like, well, I ask a lot of questions to understand business needs. And again, that wasn't necessarily clear enough for him. So I came up with this analogy. I said, I'm kind of like an online shopping tool. So how many of you have shopped online recently, especially now that we've been physical distancing? Am I the only one that's been shopping online lately? A lot, right? Of course. Okay. So I am a shoeaholic. So I'm going to use a shoe shopping analogy as an example. Picture this. You are on a department store website and you click on shoes. Now, the site asks for your payment information, informs you that those shoes will be shipped to your door in 2 to 3 business days. And now, everyone, I want you to have in your mind what those shoes you just ordered look like. Are we ready? Okay. Anyone order these? I heard a little giggle in there. Super cute, right? Anyone order these shoes? I don't see anybody owning up to this. Well, what happened? You asked for shoes and I gave you shoes. Does that make you guys difficult stakeholders? Where did I go wrong? So what I described earlier, was that really your typical online shopping experience? Whose shoes? Requirements. Yeah. So like what? What did I miss out on? What do you mean by requirements? Details, okay. Sorting the specific item, okay. Specifications, yeah. So what about things like the size? So I mean, these are super cute and I do have small feet, but these are probably not my size. Who are these shoes for? What about the type of shoes? Things like that. So yeah, the shoe attributes. So those could be things like the requirements. I missed out on that, right? So a typical online shopping experience for shoes may look more something like this. Once you select shoes, you're prompted with options as the site tries to elicit your requirements. It's summertime now and it's finally warming up. So maybe I'm looking for sandals. So once I click on sandals, look, the site is prompting for additional details. Things like what types of sandals, flat, flip-flops, heeled sandals. It's also prompting for things like the price range, size, color, and even the toe style. So these are of course, all requirements. So as a business analyst, similar to an online shopping tool, I prompt the customer for requirements to understand their needs. I also specify and model those requirements to confirm that I understood the needs of my customer correctly. And if I did my job correctly, when those shoes are delivered to the customer's door, the customer would say, yes, this is exactly what I needed. It's a very different experience than going to a brick and mortar store and being able to see, touch, feel, and try on those shoes before you actually decide to buy. So next time your friends ask you, what do you do as a business analyst? You can tell them you're kind of like an online shopping tool. I don't know if that's a whole lot better than she analyzes the business, but it seems to have worked for me over the years. Awesome. So now let's take a look at the formalized definition of business analysis from the PMI Guide to Business Analysis. Business analysis is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to determine problems and opportunities, and identify business needs and recommend viable solutions. So when I asked you guys what business analysis was, I think a lot of you provided this information over here. So awesome. So oftentimes organizations' solution before the problem space is fully analyzed. And a lot of times that can result in a solution that doesn't address the root of a problem and or meet the business needs. I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but have you run into a situation where the VP of your company went to a trade show and purchased a brand new, cool new toy, and then you had to reverse engineer a business case to prove why said new toy would solve all your problems? Anyone else experience anything like that? I mean, don't ask me how I know that this happens, right? This happened to me at a major bank here in, I'm not going to say which one, but when I was working at a big bank here in Canada, this did happen. One of the VPs went out, purchased a brand new product, and I was asked to create a business case to make it look like it was a good idea to purchase this new product, and we were going to use it on our next project. So we had to kind of make up a project to use it. Business analysis is also eliciting, analyzing, specifying, communicating, and managing requirements and other product information. So I think my analogy covered this aspect of business analysis. Business analysis is also defining benefits and approaches for measuring and realizing value and analyzing those results. So I find it shocking that organizations sometimes spend millions of dollars on projects, but they rarely go back to check to see if the projects actually satisfied their original intent. I'm curious, actually, out of the organizations that you guys work for, do you guys do this? Once the project has been implemented, and let's just say that the project was, I don't know, was supposed to bring in revenue of an extra 20%. Does anyone actually go back like a year after the project has been implemented to see if revenue has increased by 20% as a result of your project? Very little confirmation. Yep, not really. Yeah, and that's really my experience as well. So it actually falls under the business analysis domain to ensure that this happens. No benefits realization. Yeah, that's unfortunate. So again, it is part of business analysis to be able to come up with how we are going to measure whether the project has successfully, realized our original intent or the goals, the business needs that we had defined at the beginning of the project. So in short, business analysis is the set of activities performed to support the delivery of solutions that align to business objectives and provide continuous value to the organization. So in other words, business analysis would also prevent situations like that new pair of shoes you bought 6 months ago, still sitting in the box in your closet, which means you didn't need it in the first place. Anyone relate to this one as well? And don't ask me how I know how this one happens. Big pet peeve of my husband, buying things and not using them. So let's define who a business analyst is now. So business analysis may be performed by any individual, regardless of their job title. And the person who performs business analysis processes, we're going to call them a business analyst. And this is really interesting, as many of those that are titled portfolio, program, and especially project managers, they also perform business analysis activities. So this means that they are also business analysts. And this is why it makes perfect sense that PMI has invested in a business analysis body of knowledge, that being the PMI Guide to Business Analysis, as well as a BA certification, that's the PMI BA. As business analysis skills, they're also important competencies for portfolio, program, and project managers. So I would argue that project management skills are also important competencies for business analysts, and any individual who performs project management activities are project managers, regardless of their actual job title. So how many of you guys perform business analysis activities as part of your work? I know most of you said you're PMs, right? Anyone else as part of their work that, yeah, they have to identify requirements, identify business needs? Absolutely, there you go. Some sort, okay. So many portfolios, programs, and projects require a team of individuals to perform business analysis. So that's interesting. It's not usually one business analyst that works on a project, or I shouldn't say on a project, on the end-to-end process. So there's the pre-project, the business casing, then there's the project, and then usually there's follow-up with the post-implementation, follow-up to see if we actually met the original intent. Remember, we talked about benefits realization. So oftentimes, the BA who assembles the business case is not the same BA who goes on to work on the project. And it's also not usually the same BA who does the benefits realization. So what happens is once the business case is approved, then a project team is assembled where a new BA is assigned, and the BA who worked on the business case would need to transition that information over to the BA who would go on to work on the project. So now that we've defined business analyst, we've defined business analysis and also who a business analyst is, I'd like to know if anyone has jumped ship or changed their mind on what role they relate to. So I'm going to ask if Ryan could kindly launch a new poll on whether you're a project manager, a business analyst, a hybrid PMBA, or other again. And when you answer this time, answer based on your role on a project. So that's the activities that you perform on a project rather than your title. So Ryan, if you can help me launch poll 2, that would be awesome. Oh, I just see the poll's not working. Okay, let me see if I can. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can do it for you. There we go. Launch polling. Okay, hopefully you guys see it up on the screen now. So again, this time it's based on the work that you actually perform rather than the title. And this is the part where I get nervous because this experiment can go horribly wrong. But what I found is that many project managers and business analysts, for that matter, realize that they're actually hybrids once they understand the definition of who a business analyst actually is, which is anyone who performs business analysis activities. And a PM is, of course, anyone who performs project management activities. And all right, looks like the activity stops. I'm just going to end this poll. Share the results, and perfect, just like I suspected. So a few of you guys did jump ship, and I know before we had the majority of you guys had indicated that you're titled a project manager. We didn't have any BAs at that time, and just a few hybrids, and like I think one in the other category. So it looks as though most of us right now are in the hybrid project manager business analyst category. And like I said, that's exactly what I was anticipating to happen. Okay, so with that being said, that's, I think, a perfect segue into the next part of the presentation. So let's take a deeper dive into the relationship between project management and business analysis now. So I always say that project management and business analysis, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's almost like looking at two sides of the same coin. And this next section of the presentation, I'll show you exactly what I mean here. So I'm going to start off with the question again. How would you define a successful project? So within your organization, what would they define as a successful project? And again, feel free to use the chat windows. Anyone here? Is project success, I don't know, when the project is delivered within budget and schedule? That's achieve the scope within budget and schedule. Okay. Time, cost, scope, quality. Project goals. I see successful projects will be delivered as planned, as initiated, met requirements, customer. Oh, I like that one from Kimberly. Met requirements, customer and customer satisfaction, on time, schedule, scope, all of that, right? Make stakeholder happy. Okay. On time, budget. Good. When you get customer satisfaction. Awesome. So I think, again, collectively, we've hit all the right points over here. I'm going to show you what the PMI definition says. So success is measured by product and project quality, timeliness, budget, compliance, and degree of customer satisfaction. So again, it looks as though collectively we've hit all the points over here. I just want to compare for a second the product side of things and the project side of things. So if you had this scenario, let's just say that the business stakeholder said, the product doesn't meet my needs. But then you've got someone else that says, but it was delivered on time and on budget. Is this considered success? Product didn't meet my needs, but hey, it was delivered on time and on budget. Is that success? No, right? Because it has to be the combination of the two. So what about this one? This product meets my needs perfectly, but it only cost us 5 times the amount we initially budgeted. Is this one success? No again, right? Yeah, so just like that definition said earlier, a successful project is one that considers both the project and product perspectives to meet your stakeholders' needs. So project management focuses on the project perspective, and business analysis focuses on the product perspective. Oops, before we go there, in these next few slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about that relationship between business analysis and project management. I'm just going to focus on 3 aspects in this presentation because we have limited time. I'm going to focus on scope, as well as stakeholder engagement and risk management. So starting off with scope. One thing that is essential to PMs and BAs collaborating more effectively, or project professionals in general, to implement more successful projects and products is this need to understand the relationship between project and product scope. So I'm going to start on the right-hand side over here with product scope. Product scope is defined as the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. So I'm going to use the building here as an example. Now, product scope would describe the features and functions of this building. For example, it's an office building, so that's what it's being used for. Let's just say that it has 20 floors. Each floor needs to have a bathroom or multiple bathrooms, a kitchenette, 2 meeting rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So that's considered the requirements of the building itself. Now let's look at the left-hand side, project scope. The definition, the work performed to deliver a product, service, or result with the specified features and functions. So I'm going to ask you, what could be examples of project scope if we're going to use this building as an example? So we're putting up the building. What are some examples of project scope? The work needed to deliver this product. Any ideas? Foundation, floors. Okay, yeah, putting in foundations, putting in floors, very good. Designing the building, yes, you got it. An office ruling for $3 million in 5 weeks. Oh, I should help me with the budgetary in there, part of okay. So putting up walls, putting up windows, you're right. Blueprints, you got it. Okay, so you guys are on the right track. So examples of the work needed to produce the building could include things like blueprints. It can include things like even like digging, pouring concrete, obtaining permits, plumbing, electrical work, the various things that you guys had over here as well, like putting up walls, windows, all of those things. That's the work needed to put up the building. So that's considered project scope. So again, business analysis focuses on defining and managing product scope, whereas project management focuses on defining and managing project scope. Now, I can't have one without the other though. So what I mean by that is, I don't know how much work is needed to put up the building unless I understand the requirements of the building, or in other words, the product scope, right? So if I'm putting up a 2-story building versus a 50-story building, the amount of work and even what work is required is likely going to be different. And I can't come up with the requirements without first understanding the boundaries of the project. So things like the constraints that we're working against. Is there a timeline or budgetary constraint that we must stay within? So this shows that collaboration is key between the project manager and business analyst to manage these two dimensions of scope. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next aspect. So let's look at stakeholder engagement next. I'm going to first define what a stakeholder is. It's an individual, group, or organization that may be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or outcome of a project, program, or portfolio. That's my favorite part of these definitions. Perceive itself to be affected by. Those are usually the troublemakers of the organizations and the ones that you really have to watch out for, more so than the ones that are actually affected. I usually call those ones the PETAs of the organization. You guys ever heard of that term? PETA stands for pain in the backside. So I'm going to take a look on the right-hand side right now. A product stakeholder is an individual, group, or organization that may be affected by, or perceived to be affected by, and this is where the definition remains, flips a little bit different, the solution now. So product stakeholders, they're focusing on the solution, whereas the general definition of stakeholders, it could be anything related to the project, program, or portfolio. So if a stakeholder, though, is affected by the solution that the project, program, or portfolio is tasked with delivering, then they are also a stakeholder that should be on that project management radar. And these should be jointly managed. So this means that product stakeholders are a subset of all stakeholders. And collaboration, again, between the PM and BA are essential to have consistent messaging and communication to these groups. Now let's look at risk management next. And we're once again going to start by comparing the definition of project risk versus product risk. So project risk, it's an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more project objectives. Whereas product risk is an uncertainty that can affect success in the definition, development, and expected results of the product or solution. So business analysis obviously focuses on product risk, and project management focuses on project risk. And now, if we're comparing these definitions, you can see how the scope of risk is slightly different for each of these roles. We're going to do a deeper dive on this. So furthermore, project risk is the evaluation of the probability and impact of possible risk to the project itself. So the impact of the risk event is more specifically to things like timelines, costs, or project scope. Now let's compare that to product risk. This is where the product risk management involves more the evaluation of the probability and impact of possible risk to the product or development of the product. So now the impact is to the product or to business analysis activities. So you see there's, again, a slightly different focus on for project risk versus product risk. So when I document my risk events, regardless of whether it's a project risk or a product risk, I always use this risk statement that I have up on the screen right now. So if the condition occurs, then the consequence could happen. So I often see that risks are not articulated appropriately. Sometimes I've seen risk logs where there's one word documented, like resource, in the risk log. At other times, I've seen where people have put in a whole story written in the description. So in either scenario, it really isn't clear what the risk is. So if risks are articulated using this risk statement, not only is the risk itself easier to understand, it also becomes very easy to understand the impacts and therefore define whether it's a project or product risk. So if the then portion, that's that consequence / impact portion, is related to time, cost, or project scope, then it's a project risk. If that then portion of the risk statement, that's again the consequence or impact, is to the product or to business analysis activities, then it's considered to be a product risk. So let me show you an example, or actually you're going to work through this example. So you're going to tell me if this next statement is a project risk or a product risk. Let's give it a try. If the system is not user-friendly, then training will be required. Is this a project risk or a product risk? So Kim says product. Anyone else? Oh, interesting. We said product. And why is it product? Okay, we have someone says project. A few projects now. Okay, anyone want to justify the response? Looks like we're split on this. So training. Is training considered to be some, when we were saying the impact is to timelines, it's not that, it's not cost. Is training considered project scope or product scope? Oh, I see. It can impact product use. Okay. I see where you're going with this. The way that it's written over here, and stick with me for a second, the way that it's written, it's actually product risk, just the way, project risk, sorry, just the way that this was written. Training in itself in this statement is actually project scope. Project risk because training is part of the project, but not part of the product success. Yeah. Okay. So I would agree with you there, Paul. So I would say that this here is an example of project risk because the then portion of the risk statement affects project scope. And I do understand the downstream impacts affects the product. So stick with me for a second. We're going to get there, but you're already ahead of me. So let's take a look at this one. If the system is not user-friendly, then users may make mistakes when processing applications. What's this one?
Product.
I heard it, product. Yeah, this one's a lot more straightforward. It's a product risk. Absolutely, because the impact is to the product itself. But you'll notice that the risk event, so that if portion of the risk event, because it impacts both project and product, it's actually both, right? The risk event in itself is actually both a project risk or a product risk, depending on how you articulate it, because it impacts both the project and the product. And that's often the case with most risk events. So once again, collaboration between the project manager and business analyst, or even the project and product perspective, they both need to be considered when managing risks, because a lot of the times a single risk event impacts both the project as well as the product. Right. Okay, let's close off this last section here before we move on to the third part of the presentation. PMI has specifically conducted studies on PM and BA role collaboration, since these two roles have a lot of areas of perceived overlap. And we actually just went through 3 aspects of that. We started off with, oh my God, my mind's going blank for a second, but we finished off with risk, and then we did stakeholder engagement. Oh, and we started with scope, of course. And what PMI found was that more than twice as many high-performing organizations versus the low performers report that there's strong PM and BA role collaboration within their organizations. So that's 30% for low performers versus 67% for high performers. So this means that it obviously makes more sense that you have your PM and BA role collaboration, that people understand the product and project perspective and how it impacts project success. So this one's also really interesting. In 41% of organizations, both project managers and business analysts perform business analysis activities. So this tells me that we actually have a lot of hybrids out there. And I think that polling experiment that we did within this webinar kind of proved that as well. So it didn't matter what you were officially titled within your organization. A lot of the times you're likely a hybrid performing both project management and business analysis activities. So me personally, I can also certainly relate to these stats. I mean, I can think back to a project where the project manager and I, if I'm working as a BA, had a great working relationship versus the ones where it wasn't so great. And I mean, it was no coincidence that the projects where I had a great working relationship were the more successful ones. Not to mention the ones that were much more enjoyable to work on. I can also relate to the trend that many of us are being asked to wear more than one hat, and that's being like the PM hat as well as the BA hat, and playing hybrid roles as more organizations dip their toe into these agile waters. So what this means is that organizations are implementing more small projects or implementing features in increments versus these large-scale rollouts. And that we, as project professionals, will need to adapt our skills accordingly, since a lot of the times if you're working on an Agile project, they no longer need a dedicated PM and a dedicated BA. And this is a perfect segue into the last part of the presentation here and how this relationship works on Agile Teams. So a growing trend in many organizations is that project resources are expected to be cross-functional. So especially as organizations shift to adaptive approaches like Agile of delivering smaller increments of functionality at a time. So regardless of what your job title is, project professionals are being asked to not only manage a project, but to also elicit, specify, and manage those requirements. And I know, again, that many of you guys can relate to this, that regardless if you're wearing, actually, even regardless if you're working on an Agile team or not, you're often expected to play that hybrid role. And again, you told me this already in that poll that we launched earlier. So Agile teams, they therefore put a lot less emphasis on titles and a lot less emphasis on titles and a lot more emphasis on the work that needs to be done to deliver the project as well as the product. So even though there may not be someone titled a project manager or a business analyst on the team, it doesn't actually mean that project management and business analysis isn't being done. I mean, it absolutely is still being done, but the work is likely shared among your Agile team members. So what this means is that sometimes an Agile team member, they can be wearing the BA hat and operating as a business analyst. And at other times, they may be wearing that project manager hat. Or what's probably a lot more common nowadays is that they're wearing both hats, which means that they're operating as a hybrid. So this would imply that on Agile teams, it's becoming increasingly important to have these cross-functional skills to be able to wear multiple hats as an Agile team member. So if you're a project manager, you may want to pick up some BA skills. And if you're a business analyst, you may want to pick up some project management skills so that you can operate more effectively on Agile teams. So the interesting thing is right now on my LinkedIn, I'm noticing a lot of people posting just articles on how to make yourself a lot more marketable in today's environment. I mean, just given the COVID situation, there's been a lot of job losses, a lot of people looking for work nowadays, and how do we stand out? And a lot of people are saying, like, I think we need to learn to be a lot more cross-functional. And I would say I wholeheartedly agree with that, especially as a lot more people are moving to Agile, because again, you're not having dedicated PMs, dedicated BAs, where implementing things in smaller increments, which means that it's probably one single person who's having to perform both roles. So PMI over the years have been providing resources to help beef up the business analysis skills in project professionals. So there are 2 PMI publications that you can download free as PMI members, and that being the PMI Guide to Business Analysis, and this is the publication that I had the honor of working on, and Business Analysis for Practitioners, a practice guide. So these 2 publications, they go hand in hand. The PMI Guide to Business Analysis, this one can be compared to the PMBOK guide in that it's structured in a similar way, and this one describes the what. So for example, what techniques could be used when performing business analysis? Whereas BA for Practitioners, the one on the right-hand side, this one's more like a how-to guide. So this will help answer the question, how would I perform the technique? That one, I like to consider it sometimes as like business analysis for dummies, bit more of a hands-on guide. So I'm going to show you an example to kind of clarify what I mean here. Within the PMI Guide to Business Analysis, when techniques are discussed, it will show you an example of the format as well as the notation. So what I have up right now is an image of a fishbone diagram. And again, in the PMI Guide to Business Analysis, it demonstrates the format and syntax of a fishbone diagram. Whereas on the right-hand side, this is the image from Business Analysis for Practitioners. So it demonstrates a specific example on how to use the fishbone diagram. And you will not find every single tool or technique in the PMI Guide to Business Analysis in Business Analysis for Practitioners, but they are meant to be used hand in hand. So when there is a relationship, meaning that you will be able to find an image there, you'll see a reference within the PMI Guide to Business Analysis. Anyone already have these or familiar with these products? Downloaded them from the PMI site? If you Googled them, and again, if you're PMI members, you can download PDF versions for free. Nope, not seeing anything, so it looks like something that's new. Oh, you use them frequently, awesome. So in addition to these publications, oh, you've used the second one. Okay, great. So in addition to these publications, PMI has also introduced the PMI PBA certification, and this stands for the PMI Professional in Business Analysis. And it's a growing trend that I'm seeing that many folks that have the PMP certification are also going for the PMI PBA and are picking up an Agile certification to enhance their skills. And I know now, again, this is where a lot of people have been taking the time to kind of think through what can I do to kind of get ahead in my career. So this could be one option to look at. And, oh, look at that. We're already actually close to the end. So let's just do a quick recap of some of the things that we've discussed over the last 45 minutes or so. So we started off by first defining a business analyst, and I had compared my role as a business analyst to an online shopping tool and clarified that anyone who performs business analysis activities is a business analyst, regardless of your job title, which many of you realized you're actually hybrid PMBAs. We then talked about the relationship between project management and business analysis, and I said they go together like peanut butter and jelly. And we went over how the definition of project success needs to include both project and product perspectives. We also talked about how collaboration is key, specifically in areas like scope management, stakeholder engagement, and risk management. We then finished up by discussing the relationship between project management and business analysis on Agile Teams. And remember, Agile Teams, they put less emphasis on titles and more emphasis on what needs to be done to deliver the project and the product. So this means that you're often expected to perform as a hybrid PMBA. And again, regardless of your title. So with that, this takes us to the end. Thank you again for joining us, but we're going to leave some time for some Q&A. I've left plenty of time for Q&A right now, but I wanted to mention that I had recently launched a self-paced PMI PBA bootcamp course in partnership with some select PMI chapters. And what this means is that the course completion certificates would be offered by these chapters. And you'll find more information on my website. If you have any questions on certification, you can reach out. I have my contact details up on the screen. And I know a lot of you will probably be interested in the stuff that I have on the bottom over there, the PDO claim code information. So with that being said, do we have any questions?
Just a quick reminder, Cheryl, for everybody to, if you have a question, unmute your microphone if you need to use your audio, but don't forget to turn it back off so we don't have any reverb as well.
Thank you, Ryan. And you can also use the chat if your microphone isn't working. Really? Nothing? Well, I don't see any questions coming in, but I know, oh, there you go. The difference between the BA and product owner in Agile. So a lot of the times I think someone who's, let's again separate the role from the title, okay? So someone who maybe performs business, I think a product owner actually does business analysis work. So someone who typically works as a business analyst, a lot of the times they act as the product owner on Agile Teams. So when you say the difference between them, sometimes it's the BA that acts as a product owner, if that helps. So a product owner on an Agile team, they're supposed to be someone who sits on the business side and be able to make decisions as to what goes into a prioritized backlog, also the priority in the backlog, what gets implemented in the next iteration, what gets approved, and things like that. So it would have to be a business analyst who works on the business side and has that authority to be able to make those types of decisions. So it's often the same person. And if it's not, usually a product owner would rely on someone with those business analysis skills to help them make the decision. Hopefully that answered the question, Paul.
Yeah. Hi, Cheryl. It's Paul Drum. I asked the question. Just to comment on your point, I agree with what you said. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Thanks. one thing in the company I was at previously, they had actually, oddly enough, gotten rid of the BA role because they'd gone fully agile. They'd gotten rid of the BA role. Some of the BAs became what they called IT product owners.
Okay.
So they were product owners who resided within the IT organization. Other product owners were from the business organization, and they were just called product owners. But you're right, they were performing roughly the same role,
Right.
but it really depended on their background. So the business product owners knew the business very well, but didn't understand technology almost at all. Whereas the BAs had a foot in both camps. They understood the technology to an extent, and then understood the business.
Exactly.
And they were still working out whether an agile squad needed, or set of squads needed, one of both of these people, like an IT PO and PO, or just one, or what have you. So.
I think, again, like, we don't need to focus on specifically titles or anything like that, or even how many people and so forth. But I think as long as that business analysis work, and considering the product perspective, I guess, from a business side as well as the IT side, is being taken into consideration, whether it's one person that has those skills on both sides, or you do need two different people because maybe you don't have one person with that skill set, then I think that may be the perspective that would make more sense on an Agile team. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah, it does. I was just looking at it from perspective of like a real life case.
Yeah.
Where in an entire large organization, there's no such thing as a BA anymore. I just wanted to mention that as a
I hear you.
real-life
So
case.
when we say there's no such thing as a BA, there's no such thing as maybe someone titled like as a full-time BA on there, but that doesn't mean that, again, business analysis is not happening.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
saying. A lot
saying
of the times those BAs end up doing other work on there.
You can't do without that activity occurring.
Exactly.
But you will never find that job title.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Andre, can you speak briefly about the difference between, I see some follow-up down here, between PMI's BA focus versus the CBAP? Okay, so you want me to compare the two certifications? Do you mean the PMI PBA versus the CBAP certification? Is that what you mean, Andre? Yes. Okay. So yeah, I do get this question a lot, and I was anticipating it. So the PMI PBA, it's a BA certification offered by PMI, and then there's the CBAP, which stands for a Certified Business Analysis Professional, and it's offered by a different organization, the IIBA, which stands for the International Institute for Business Analysis. And I know I just threw like 4 acronyms at you guys. So now both certifications hold equal weight. So I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, because that's not the case. They are both equally good BA certifications. They're just offered by 2 different governing bodies. The backstory behind that, I mean, I wasn't there when this happened, but I heard what apparently happened, or I know the story on the PMI side was that they have these Pulse of the Profession reports. I don't know if you guys have ever read through them every single year. And you'll notice that sometimes they post the stats at the end. And one of the questions that they ask are, what are the top reasons why projects fail? And they realized year over year, the reason why projects fail is because of poor requirements. So PMI took that to IBA. This was like back in, I think, 2013, I'm tempted to say. And they said, hey, we see that projects are failing because of poor requirements. IBA, you guys work with requirements. You guys want to team up and work together on this? And apparently IBA said, no, we're fine on our own. We don't want to collaborate with you guys. So PMI said, well, this is obviously still an issue, so we're going to do our own thing. And that's when they launched the practice guide, the certification, and so forth. So the story on the IBA side was that PMI came in and said, hey, we want to buy you guys out and bully us. And we said, not for sale. So, buzz off. And they went on and did their own thing. The truth, I don't know. It's probably somewhere in between. But nonetheless, where we are right now is there are 2 different governing bodies with 2 certifications that are, they are essentially equivalent. So if you have the CBAP, I would say probably doesn't make sense for you to go for the PBA. If you have the PBA, it doesn't make sense for you to go for the CBAP. The reason why I have both is because I want to be able to teach the certification boot camps on both sides. So that's why I have both, and it would make sense for me to have both. Well, what I am seeing right now is that, and it's really not the case that, one is catered towards hybrids versus the other, but obviously with PMI offering the PMI PBA, you're seeing a lot more of the hybrid PMBAs going for the PBA certification because it's offered by PMI. So you're seeing a lot of folks that are project managers, PMP certified, looking to enhance their skills, realizing that, actually, I'm a hybrid PMBA, similar to a lot of you guys in this room right now. And so they're obtaining the PBA certification because it just makes more sense to certify under the same PMI umbrella. The PBA as well, you're obviously studying from the PMI Guide to Business Analysis. And that guide, like I said, it's written in a similar format to the PMBOK. So if you're familiar with the PMBOK, it should be a much easier read to go through the PMI Guide to Business Analysis versus the BABOK guide, which is the equivalent publication by IBA. And that's what you would study for to go for the CBAP certification. So what we're seeing again is a lot more hybrid PMBAs that are going for the PMI PBA certification. And then you get a lot more of the peer BAs is what I'm going to call them. So these are the folks that they sometimes could be enterprise architects, but they don't necessarily operate as a hybrid, but they're more focused on the business analysis side. They're favoring the IBA's CBAP certification. But content-wise, actually, they're identical, and it's not like one organization is saying, oh my God, business analysis is done completely different than the other one. That's not the case at all. Does that make sense, Andre? Okay. Fascinating story too. Okay, good. I see one more over here. I found the company you work for didn't really know the difference between PMBAs and wanted me. Okay, so it's more of a comment. And that's the case in most organizations, I think. Whether they do know the difference or don't know the difference, a lot of the times they have the expectation is for one person to do both because there's a lot of overlap or perceived overlap between those two roles. So it's a natural thing to do. And I think, again, a lot of us can relate to that just based on that survey that poll that we sent out, where a lot of us actually operate as hybrids. And I myself as well, I do operate as a hybrid in most organizations, even though I go in maybe as a business analyst. A lot of the times I'm still having to perform project management duties as well, especially on smaller projects. Okay, is there anything else? On the PDU code, yep. So if you hold one of the PMI certifications, this accounts for one PDU. Is it strategic and business management? Is that the one we logged it under, Ryan?
Correct.
I think that's the one that we logged it under.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so it's one PDU. So when you go, I don't know if you guys have ever logged PDUs before, but if you log into your CCR, what does it stand for again? It's the Continuing Education Portal? No. If you log into your PMI account on pmi.org, you can actually go to your dashboard. And then on your dashboard, I think there's a button there somewhere that says log PDUs or register PDUs, record PDUs, something along those lines. When you do that, you can enter this PDU claim code that we have up on the screen. And then they'll be able to search for this event and you'll be able to log this PDU there. Okay, does that help? So take this down. Thanks, Ryan. All right, any other questions, guys? Thank you, Henry. Thank you all. Perfect. Thanks, Louise. Oh, it doesn't accept it.
This is George. I joined a little bit later. Is this presentation going to be available for later viewing?
That is a great question. Yes, we recorded the webinar so that we can send it out on demand after the presentation.
So I should just link to the same.
I think an email will be sent out.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you
Appreciate
all.
it. Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Cheryl. And everyone, have a look in your inbox shortly for an email from me with some links as well. You'll also have my personal email address. So if you're ever having problems with logging into PDU code, you can feel free to message me back and we can start a conversation that way. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on a Tuesday afternoon. And thank you so much, Cheryl, for such an insightful webinar today. Any further questions, feel free to message me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ryan.